He says the system is not letting him in.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to
Okay,
call the
we
meeting to
are-
order. It's about what, 7:05? Please take the roll.
President Alvarado.
He's going to go upstairs.
President Alvarado.
Here.
Vice President Suda.
Here.
Director Stanley.
Here.
Director Zepeda.
Here.
And Director Wiener.
Here.
Next item, please.
The Pledge of Allegiance, or to observe a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item, please.
Approval of the agenda order. Any member of the board may request an agenda item be postponed, removed, or heard out of order. An item may not be added to the agenda unless it meets the requirements of an emergency situation as defined in Government Code Section 54956.5.
Okay, what is the will of the body? Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. I'll second
Is
it.
that Director Wiener?
That is correct.
Thank
Second
you,
by
and
Zepeda.
thank you.
Okay, take the roll, please.
All right, Director Wiener,
Here.
Ridership, and if that's the case, where
Director Zepeda,
ridership for those lines?
I'm sorry?
Director Zepeda,
Yes.
thank you. Director Stanley,
Yes.
Vice President Sudith,
Yes.
and President Alvarado.
Yes.
So passes.
Next item, please.
Public comments. I did not receive any prior to this.
Okay, so you don't need to go and read that whole thing. Next item,
Okay.
please.
The action calendar. The board will discuss and seek public input before taking action. A, discuss whether to complete an evaluation of the district's former general counsel.
Okay, good evening, my fellow board members. We have one item tonight to discuss whether to complete an evaluation of the district's former general counsel. First, I will ask for a motion to proceed and a second. Then we will have a discussion related to this topic only, as this is the only action item on the agenda. Once again, I will caution you to stick to this item. Once we have a motion and a second, then we will have discussion. I will go as I usually do, ask each board member to give their comments or questions, starting with Director Stanley, and then going in alphabetical order. Next will be Director Wiener, Director Zepeda, Vice President Sudduth, and finally myself. I will ask that all board members be mindful and not interrupt another board member when they are speaking. You will have two opportunities to be heard. After this process, I will then ask for a roll call vote. When this is completed, I will adjourn the meeting as our former general counsel resigned on June 24. Today we have assisting us Lisa Charbonneau from the firm of Liebert, Kennedy, and Whitmore, who is on contract to the district. I will now ask Lisa to tell us a little bit about her experience and her firm will not be responding to our board-approved RFP/RFQ process for the general counsel to avoid any appearance of favoritism or conflict. Lisa, please address the board.
Good afternoon, directors. Thank you for having me here. My name is Lisa Charbonneau. I'm an attorney in the San Francisco office of Liebert, Cassidy, Whitmore. We are a statewide labor and employment firm. I think just to keep it short, I've appeared before numerous governing bodies in open and closed session on all matters of employment law. So I'm happy to be here and happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go in order. There is no staff presentation tonight, so Director Stanley, questions, comments? I'm sorry,
yes.
my bad. Let me take that back. First, I want a motion to approve going forward on this item. Can I have a motion? Motion to go forward with the item.
And just to clarify, the motion is not that we're moving forward with a recommendation, it's just to be able to discuss the issue.
That's correct.
I'll make a motion so that way we can discuss the issue.
Okay. Can I have a second?
I second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Director Stanley, comments, questions?
Well, I have a question first of Lisa. Is that possible?
Yes, absolutely. That's why she's here.
Okay, so Lisa, Nick tendered his resignation. However, we haven't accepted or rejected it yet. So what is his status? He resigned or not? He's not of the opinion that he has just resigned.
Lisa, before you respond to that, I've already responded to Mick and told him that the board has accepted his resignation, but it's really not necessary because it's not in his contract that we have to accept or reject his resignation. So then, go ahead and give us some clarity.
Well,
Perhaps just a minute. Actually, David, you responded on the 24th and you accepted the resignation, but even in your email on the 24th, you acknowledged that the board has to make that decision and you can't make it yourself. So let's try not to be misleading.
I actually was mistaken. The board does not have to accept his resignation, but let Lisa respond to that before you interrupt again.
Well, I think that would be an issue for legal counsel to evaluate based on the terms of the contract and the specific communications, and that's going to be outside the scope of this open session discussion. I do want to politely remind everyone that the discussion does need to be specific to this specific action item, especially in a special meeting. So if we can make sure that we're focusing on whether to complete an evaluation of district council, we'll be staying within the parameters of the Brown Act. So I want to make sure we don't get too far away from that.
Thank you, Lisa. Director Stanley, continue.
Thank you, Lisa. So my thoughts are, well, I'm concerned about whether or not we're about his status, but regardless, I think that it would be beneficial to hear from Mick directly rather than through innuendo and other people, and to get his insight. He has served this district for almost 40 years, which is the majority of the board would have still been in grade school when he started working for the district. He has a lot of knowledge, a lot of insight and perspective. And I think that the whole board is not aware of the way he's been unable to do his job of late. And I think it would be good for us to hear from Mick. So I think it's valuable as elected representatives to hear all facts before we make a decision about anything. And I think as a courtesy to somebody who has served the district for 4 decades, it would be the proper thing to do. I see so much lately of people not being treated well. and that concerns me. And this is a prime example of 40 years of service, and let's just kick you in the door, out the door. So I'm concerned about, you know, words like equity and justice are great words, but so is courtesy and respect. And you know, and we're going to need to hear from Mick again in the future because he has so much knowledge of this district. And I would like to leave the door open at some point. So it would be good to hear from him and hear what he has to say.
Okay, thank you, Director Stanley. Director Weiner. Director Weiner, are you there?
Yes, I'd like to know what is included in an evaluation of the district's former general counsel. Before I can make a decision, I need to hear what that would be. I definitely agree with Director Stanley regarding hearing from Mick, and I'm not sure whether this particular item would allow for that. And I'm not sure whether it would be in closed session or open session. What would be the reason for it being in closed session? Should we do that? There's a lot of details that I'm concerned with about doing an evaluation and what it means to do that once Mick has tendered his resignation. So there's that. The other thing, to Sherry's point, is that we only have 2 employees, and we never intervened, even though some of us had heard that there was tension between the 2. My feeling, well, I talked to both Lisa and Mick, and my feeling was that they should work it out. And that's where I left it with both of them. But
Director Weiner, I just want to just briefly interject to remind you to try and stay within the confines of our action item. I know there's a lot of information that's relevant to this broader discussion, but we are talking about whether to complete and evaluate the district's former general counsel, although I do want to say your clarification questions are appropriate.
That is why I'm bringing up this matter of the board's failure to actually do its job, because I'm wondering if that can be discussed under the rubric of the district's former counsel, or do we need another type of meeting to do that, is another question that I have. I feel that that is a real deep issue that the board should address, because we only have 2 employees, and I think from a human resources perspective or anybody's perspective, we certainly didn't deal with the problem of conflict between our only 2 employees. So that's part of why I am trying to get a clarification of what this would entail before I can support it or oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, I'm going to ask you to comment on the evaluation in closed open session, Director Weiner's questions. So can you give us a little clarity on that?
Sure. An evaluation, I think, in this context would involve the former employee or an employee's performance. So you're evaluating the performance of the employee In the section of the Brown Act that discusses this in the closed session exception, it makes very clear that decisions cannot be made about compensation, but there can be deliberation about a wide range of performance issues related to this specific former employee. I don't have all the history of this matter, so I would caution the board on not discussing other employee performance issues in the context of whatever agenda item comes up in the future. And I would suggest that there is thought put to having a separate conversation about board responsibilities and performance as opposed to the specific employee. I hope that answers your question.
Could you repeat that last part? So you
Director
are,
Weiner?
yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can.
Yeah. So the last part of your sentence went by pretty fast. So you were saying that the question of the board's performance on having employees would not be appropriate in the context of seeking to get public input. Discussing whether to have the evaluation of the district's general counsel. So discussion of our actions would not be appropriate in that meeting?
The general framework is all of your discussions need to be public unless the discussion fits under one of these narrow exceptions. And the exception for a closed session item on evaluating a former or current public employee's performance would need to be curtailed to that, or else you could be violating the Brown Act requirement. So I would suggest if you, Director Weiner, is interested in discussing the management of the board, board performance, board goals, board objectives, that would not be something that would be permissible in the closed session item about this former employee, unless the former employee had some responsibility for the board's actions in the scope of his services for the board. But I don't know that to be the case.
Thank you.
Are you all set, Director Weiner?
Sorta.
Okay. We'll
I
come
may-
back to you again.
Okay.
All right. Director Spada?
All right, well, Lisa, first off, thank you for being here tonight with us. So I have a few different notes that I've been writing through the conversations here. I would like to see a process, whatever we decide on today, that we create a process for future, because we're obviously going to be looking to acquire a new attorney for the district. And I want to make sure that whatever we do gets written into a process. This is something that I asked before the attorney turned in his resignation, when this discussion was being brought up, is that we have no process. And it was brought up really haphazardly to where it almost seemed that that individual just wanted to do it for that one instance to try to save his from going out to bid, supposedly. So if we have no process, we don't want to come across like we're giving somebody a special treatment over somebody else, because over 40 years, he has been their attorney, and I don't know if he's ever been evaluated before. So I want to make sure that our liability is limited if we were to do this, because now we're going to be evaluating someone who does no longer work for us. So what is the advantage of that? And are we going to be evaluating versus finger pointing? And I want to make sure that we're not going to be finger pointing if we decide to move forward with this. And to me, an evaluation is giving that person more or less a grade. Did you advise us correctly 100% of the time or 50% of the time? Did you provide X, Y, Z? Did you attend every meeting like you were supposed to? Right? That to me is an evaluation, as opposed to tell me all the dirt you got on somebody else or on you or other board directors or whatever it may be. so we can go after them. That is not an evaluation. And at this time, I don't know if we're going to be able to grow from an evaluation. I think what we're looking for is more of a brainstorming, gathering of information from him so that we can put it together for future board attorneys. So we can say, hey, he stumbled across this and here's how he did it. Here's some historic stuff that we will need, right? That's not an evaluation, that's just gathering data from it so we can have it, because he has been with us for 40 years. So he's got a lot of really great information that we can use for the board going forward. But an evaluation, the way that I see it in my mind, is a snapshot of his performance for the past, let's say, a year or 2 years or whatever period of time. And if it's a snapshot of that, he's gone. So it doesn't matter if we give him an A or an F. We're not going to gather anything from telling him he did good or bad. He's already decided to resign. If he didn't resign, I would be looking at this a little bit different because we could learn something more and be able to give him a grade. And I just don't know if we're going to be able to. And I'm afraid that we might have some liability if we bring him back to ask him questions from his performance prior to him quitting. And would we do the same for other employees? Because he did say at one of our last meetings that he would be treated under a certain code as an employee. So if he is, are we setting a precedence for other employees who decide to quit or that we terminate, that they can say, you now need to give me an evaluation, even though you've already terminated me or I terminated you, because I want to understand what's happening. Right? So we want to make sure we're not setting a precedence there. If it is an evaluation, I believe it should be closed session because it would be personnel information to him individually, as opposed to a informational session where we can gather all this great data that he may have in his brain about the district for the past 40 years. And my other question, and I don't know, Lisa, if this is...
Director Cepeda, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Oh, yes.
Can you comment on those and then go to your next question afterwards? Thank you.
Perfect. Yep.
Lisa, go ahead. Comment, please.
So I think what I would suggest, your questions make sense. It's a very typical question that would be asked of me in my capacity as an attorney in closed session or in a confidential memo to the board. So I might suggest either asking staff to give the board an opinion on some of the subjects that you've talked about before making this kind of vote, or asking for that prior to the evaluation if you vote for moving forward with the evaluation.
Thank you. And do you see any liability with us bringing him back? And are we setting a precedence for other employees?
I think your questions are good ones, but it's not something that we would want to talk about in open session.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. In one of my last points, are we as a board able to continue contacting a terminated employee, whether it be just a termed employee? Are we able to contact that person for any other information that has to do with the district?
So to the extent your question is related to communications in connection with this evaluation and whether or not that's permissible, I don't think there's anything legally preventing you from asking any person to speak to the board. I don't know that you can compel this individual at this time.
Okay. And I think that's about it. The only other comment is somebody mentioned that we kicked him out, but we didn't kick him out. He ended up resigning. So we want to make sure that that's clear out there, that he ended up putting out a resignation before the board ever had an opportunity of going out to RFP, that I'm sure he would have been part of that RFP. And he decided to no longer work with us. So it was on the other side. So just putting that out there. That is all that I have for points right now. So thank you, President Alvarado. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Director Cepeda, and you will have another opportunity to questions or comments in the next go-round. Vice President Sutter, please.
Disruption.
All right.
And what we're trying to accomplish here
Very similar to what
being from an
Director
emergency
was saying, but
environment.
I need to warn you, I'm on a board meeting for my job, so simple background, and I've turned it down as much as I can. But there's one particular board member who,
Your Director said it's a little bit hard to understand you. Sorry.
I said I'm on another board member, I'm on another board call for my job, and I've turned it down as much as I can. But there's a board member here who likes to scream when he talks. So I'll do the best that I can to turn it down when I need to, but
All right, we can hear you much better now, so go ahead, continue.
yeah, but I'm just warning you, I might have to put you on hold when he starts screaming, because he screams
no
really.
problem.
Here's my query. You know, there was a couple of things that were saying, and one of them was, what would this evaluation look like and what would it be about? And I just want to bring to the attention of the board that the query, the reason this is on this action calendar is that there were board members who requested it. And so in due notice to this, because there were board members who requested it, then that's what this would look like, the contents thereof. They should have been contemplated when it was requested to be on this agenda, right? So that is something that we should have, that it should have been brought forth on when it was requested to be on this agenda. The other thing is, when we talk about these contracts, you know, one of the first questions I asked when I came to the district and elected to this district was about these evergreen agreements and the parameters for this performance review that the attorney was completely in control of in this evaluation was not an indicator in that. So the timing, the timeliness of this request for an evaluation of a resigned employee, meaning someone who has tendered his resignation voluntarily. And I want to make sure I say that again. Someone who has tendered his resignation voluntarily, not coerced, not forced, and not fired, but has tendered his voluntary resignation, gives me pause in why we are supporting this. And if we even have a good standing, because they are not compelled, as Ms. Charbonneau has told us, to actively or positively participate in this process. So if they are not compelled to affirmatively participate in this process, I might question why this is one necessary and why we are bending to do this. And the other part is, how are we developing the criterion for it? We were developing the criterion for the new RFP and the hire, the new hire, but how are we developing criteria post termination, post resignation, I should say? So those questions for me would have to come back to the why and the how for someone who is, the key word in this A paragraph is former, because there's no compulsion for the participation. There's no compulsion for the board to complete this action. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Sutter. I will not give my comments. I truly do not feel that that we should evaluate the former general counsel, only because the former general counsel decided that he wanted to resign. He was not told to resign. He knew about the approved RFQ process that the board approved, and he was entitled to apply to it. So I feel that the board is basically going backwards in doing this and evaluating him. I don't see the X factor here in doing it. So for me, I wholeheartedly agree that we should not do it, but that's my opinion. I'm only one board member, and I will leave it up to my fellow board members to make up the decision. So we're gonna go one more go round. We're gonna start with Director Stanley.
Okay, so I know that one other board member has contacted our board attorney. I asked him for clarification a few days ago, and he said that he said what I sent everybody on the chat. So he's still waiting. So we still don't know if he's resigned or not, regardless of how many times you repeat it. And I think that Mick should be heard. I think that the fact that he wants to be heard. I think I heard, but I'm not sure if I heard correctly. It makes no never mind to Mick whether or not he's trying to keep his job. That's not something that's important to him, I don't believe. But I do think that we as a board owe courtesy and respect to anyone who's been employed by the West County Wastewater District for as long as he has. And if he would like to be heard, then we should hear him. And I don't think that we're doing anything special or out of turn by hearing. It's our duty as elected representatives to hear and to gather all the information we can and to be fully informed when we make decisions. And I don't understand what the problem is, because we're doing our job. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stanley. Director Weiner, final thoughts, comments? You're muted. There you go. You're on now. Ah, you muted again.
All right.
Now we can hear you.
All right. I'm going to lower my volume until it's acceptable at the lowest level possible. How is that?
That's good. I can hear you.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
How about now?
Yes.
All right. I can hear you as well, and that's a good volume for me.
All right.
Board attorney. The board attorney's resignation had reason, and that reason implied that the board lost confidence in him. I know that I certainly wasn't at any meeting where that was discussed, and I feel that's a fault of the board. Conditions have changed. I was asking for an evaluation when he was an employee. He was still with us. Maybe discuss whether to complete, maybe an evaluation is not the appropriate venue to discuss why he resigned. But that needs to be done. The board only has, again, 2 employees, and to Director Cepeda's point, they're not being employees. There's both the general manager and the board attorney are special cases. What happens with them is not generalizable to any other staff member in the district, in my view. I mean, I could be wrong, and the attorney could answer that question. But they're special cases, I think, and there are only 2 of them, and their working relationship is the responsibility of the board. And the board had no discussion about their working relationship, even though we knew it was strained. And that's why I need a venue to discuss. That's what I need a venue to discuss. And if this particular item is not a venue to discuss that matter, the matter of how the board did not take any action to clear up a conflict between its only 2 employees, if this is not the venue for that, then I need to find another venue, and I won't support this. And so I want the board attorney's comments on whether this is the appropriate venue to determine why the board did not do its duty and clear up the conflict between 2 of its employees, how it was that the resignee, he resigned for specific reasons, and we're not going to discuss that. What's the venue for that? Or could this particular evaluation of the general counsel be the venue for that discussion?
Director Weiner, to your question, it would not be within the closed session exception to have such a broad conversation. It's really something that would be intended to evaluate an employee. And to the extent you want to comment or discuss other personnel matters, we would need to evaluate the best forum for that kind of discussion and whether or not it's available to be done in closed session at all.
Yeah, would there be, well, to have that discussion, the circumstances regarding employee evaluations would be necessary to discuss. We would have to review employee behavior and discuss matters in order to get to the bottom of how we, why we didn't discuss these matters as a full board. We have to, I think, get down to the specifics because we haven't done that. And so I don't know what the venue would be, but that's what I would like to have happen. And so again, if this is not the proper venue to get to the bottom, I mean, to do the diligence that the board should have done in the past and had taken a vote on the matter and come up with a solution to the problem, if this is not the venue to hear what that all was about so we can learn from it moving forward when dealing with our employees. And I think the specifics of this are very important. And so I don't know the venue to have that happen. I don't know how to get it done correctly. If this is not the venue, then I no longer support it. If it is the venue to get to the bottom of that issue, the circumstances of the resignation of our general counsel, if this is not the venue to do that, then I want to have another venue to do that. And I think that's important for the board to move forward because we only have responsibility for 2 employees. And the conflict between these 2 employees, I believe, is inevitable. And the board should not.
Director Weiner, I just want to caution you to get, I know we got where you're going on this, but we need to really be careful that we're not talking about any other employee performance right now, and we're really zooming in on whether or not this evaluation will go forward. And to the extent you want more information about how to discuss these issues that are important to you, I would direct that.
What venue should that be discussed in? If it's not this, then I'm opposed to it. And then I need to know what venue to discuss those matters that I just brought up, ultimately. So.
All right, well, this is really not the venue to do that, so are you done, Director Weiner?
I believe I am, but I haven't gotten my answer.
Well, that's because she can't answer, because we're talking about an evaluation of Mick right now, not an evaluation of Mick and Lisa, so there's no real answer she can give you that's gonna satisfy you, so we need to move on.
No, never mind. I'm good.
Okay, Vice President Sutter? I'm sorry, Director Cepeda.
That's all right. I don't mind if she goes first. So while we were chatting, I Googled the difference between an employee evaluation, or what does it mean, and the purpose of an evaluation, according to Google and the results that came up, is to evaluate the process, to promote communication and provide useful feedback about job performance, to facilitate better working relationships, and provide a historical record of performance, and to contribute to professional development. At this time, since our attorney has quit, it no longer matters. We can't provide him feedback to get better because he's not going to be around to get better. So this is the venue that I believe that the rest of the directors want to go is not an evaluation. So again, an evaluation is going to say, how well did you do this? How well did you do this? Or how well did you do that? It's not, again, finger pointing to tell me about how something else didn't work. So I think we're looking for a different venue, perhaps as an exit interview. But even if we were to do that, I don't know if the board would be at the purview of evaluating a district employee. I think that would need, like Lisa maybe, or some other, Lisa C here, not our GM Lisa. It would require an HR person to have the exit interview. From all my previous jobs, whenever there's an exit interview, it's not done by everybody, it's done by the HR person, right? To just get notes from the employee to provide feedback about what could have gone better. It's not an evaluation. So I think we're looking at something different, but for the sake of this agenda item, it's not what we're looking to achieve. And even if we do have something that will give us that venue, I don't know if legally the board would be able to sit there and have that HR communication with that employee. And maybe Lisa can provide a little bit of background on that if I'm correct or not.
Well, because we're in a special meeting, I do want to again caution and remind all board members that we should not be trying to take action or elicit any kind of collective action on the decision to do anything else except what is on this agenda item. And as far as the forum for HR performing an exit interview, again, because of the narrowness of the topic that we have here, I think what would be more procedurally appropriate is, regardless of whatever action you take on this item, directing staff to come up with a plan to bring back to the board as an action item in the future, and whether or not that's exploring different ways of discussing something regarding this particular individual. It would be giving direction so action can be deliberated as noticed on an agenda.
Spada, is that?
Sorry, it's so legalistic and procedural.
Nope, I like it, Lisa. Thank you for keeping us all on track. I think we would have been all the way on the other side of the world already if it was somebody else. So the last comment was that somebody mentioned that Mick wants to be heard. And again, I just don't think this is the right place to allow that to happen because it wouldn't allow it anyway. So that is it for now. Thank you, President.
Vice President Sutter.
Since the message that AC Transit is just about connecting commercial areas to other commercial areas and not people to.
I'm going to go back to the question before us. It says whether we're going to complete and evaluate the former general counsel. And he keeps saying that he's a former general counsel, and whether we're going to evaluate the former general counsel, and he's the former general counsel, and I'm not quite sure that as Ms. Lisa, Ms. Charbonneau has said quite a few times, that we cannot compel the former general counsel to participate actively in whatever it is that is being asked. So not only can I not support it, I'm still not sure why we're still discussing it. So no, I don't support it, and I'm still not sure why we're still discussing it. It's evaluating a former employee, as someone said already, is an employee, and the discussion is draining me right now. So no, can we finish this out, please? It's a former. They resigned. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Sutter. Once again, I will reiterate as president that I do not support this action, and we have gone through the board twice already, so now I'm going to be asking Gina for a roll call, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Does it need to be motioned first?
It's already
Okay, I will.
seconded.
No, there's been a motion and seconded, and I call the question.
What is the motion that we're voting on?
Whether or not
to move forward?
Evaluation of the general counsel, yes or no?
All right. Director Stanley?
Abstain.
Director Weiner?
Yeah, I don't think this will do any good, and I'm opposed to it.
Director Zepeda?
No.
Vice President Suda?
No.
And President Alvarado?
Absolutely not.
Motion fails.
All right, I want to thank you all for taking time out of your schedules to come and discuss this issue tonight.
Can I have a point of order?
Now adjourned.
Wait, can I have a point of order, sir?
Well, I mean, there's
Did we-
nothing action
did
that
we-
can discuss.
Did we need to take a motion? Or was it just merely polling?
No, the motion was, when we began, if you recall, I asked for a motion and a second, and I believe it was you and Director Stanley who motioned and seconded.
Right, so this last polling,
Already.
this last polling wasn't a motion. It was just the polling of the board for their desire to continue forward. Is that correct?
Here you go, Director Weiner. We took a motion and a second at the beginning of the actual action calendar item. You motioned it, Director Stanley seconded it, or I don't know, maybe it was opposite. So we had a motion and a second, then there was a discussion. That was the discussion that we went through. Then there was a roll call where the motion was, so the motion is done.
Sorry.
The meeting is over and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Still confused, still confused.
Thank you, Ms. Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa, for your help. Have a wonderful.
And thank you, Gina.
Thank you, Ms. Gina. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Night.
Good night.
Night.